It's your girl Nancy Red, and this is season 3 of Mompreneurs, where every week we celebrate beautiful Black entrepreneurs who are simultaneously amazing business moguls and awesome moms. We listen to their life stories and inspiring advice. Now, I have to admit that when I heard about my next guest, Elyse Fox, and her nonprofit organization, the Sad Girls Club, I got really happy because, goodness gracious, do we need her in this very safe space, a very intentional community that she's created that is designed to remove the stigma about mental health conversations and also to provide access to mental health services for millennial and Gen Z women, girls, and femmes of color who need it. And so many of us need it, including myself. So it is so wonderful to have her here today to talk about that, her work for Teen Vogue, and everything else. Thank you so much for being here, Elyse.
Thank you for having me.
Okay, goodness gracious, you are doing very important work. You are filling a void that is much needed. But before we get into all your mompreneurship, let's talk about who makes you a mom. Tell us about your household.
So I live with my son Basil, who's 5 years old. It's just he and myself right now, and he keeps me very, very busy. He's starting kindergarten this fall, so it's an exciting time where I'm like living this my last like baby days with him, and it's like a cool transition. I feel like it flew by.
The last baby days. I know all about those, and he is so cute. He's like your mini.
Thank you. That's a compliment.
That definitely is a compliment because you are beautiful inside and out.
Thank
All
you.
right,
Thank you.
so we can get back to business now. I just wanted to put that out there that she has an adorable son. But when it comes to mompreneurship, which came first, entrepreneurship or motherhood?
Entrepreneurship for sure. I feel like I'm the youngest in my family, and I was always like the misfit of the family where I took a very untraditional route with like my career. And I've always been somebody to try new things. So it's been like ingrained, but entrepreneurship has like always been something that excited me.
What do you mean when you took an untraditional route with your career?
Like I like use I don't know. I felt like I used school and education as like kind of like a suggestion, like, okay, let me go here and get as much as I can for myself. The degree wasn't like my trophy or my end goal. I just wanted to gain as much knowledge as possible and like really gain more experience in the real world. And as a like first generation youngest girl in the family, my mom was like, hell no, like that's not the path that I decided for you. So my way was very different, where I was just like, I took this class, I learned the skills that I want to learn, like let me go into the world and like put it out there and really try it out. So that's what I did. I went to school, I studied film and production my entire time in college, and then like I took a gap year and I was like, I'm gonna move to Los Angeles and like start working in film and TV. I worked on the show Criminal Minds for a season, and then I was like, that's when I realized like I wasn't really happy. I was very depressed, and then things kind of snowballed into the career that you see today. But I just tried different things that um, I just took a lot of risk. I guess I'll say.
So you had all of this in you. Talk to us about the idea for the Sad Girls Club because this did not come to you originally as a business.
No, it definitely didn't come to me as a business. I was working in Los Angeles, and I had everything that I thought I wanted to be successful. Like I was working a really great job. I'm like styling Shamar Moore. I'm driving around LA. I'm going like personal shopping. And then I was just like, why am I so damn unhappy? I'm in this relationship. It's not fulfilling me. I've been in this for 5 years. My job is not fulfilling me. It's not what I thought I wanted. And I was just miserable. Honestly, I was miserable with everything in front of me. And that just showed me that I needed to do more to sustain my happiness. So I literally moved back to New York City very abruptly with no job lead, very minimal savings, and was like, I'm gonna just start fresh. I'm gonna start fresh and really understand what I need for my mental health. And during that year that I moved back, the first year that I moved back to New York City, I started documenting my experiences with like my friends and my family, asking them really hard conversations. It was an election year with a really hard candidate. And I just started having open and honest conversations about the future of us and like our health and women and, what like politics and things like that. And then I put off the film to just show my friends and family, like, yes, I know that it looks like I'm okay, but these things are heavy on my heart and on my mind, and I'm actually like not okay. Film was my way of communicating with my community and my family. And when I released that film, I didn't expect anything to happen, but to my surprise, large swarm of like women from all around the world, Africa, Asia, London, all around the United States. They saw themselves in my story and they wanted to be a part of that story. And they also wanted to have a conversation, like more conversations about what mental health meant for Black women and women of color. So I just thought like, okay, I can either sit on this film and like let it just be what it is, or I can create something bigger. And as a filmmaker, you want to create a conversation, but I also wanted to create a something larger than myself out of this film. Because I'm very much a low key person. I don't really like being in front of the camera. I never really wanted to be in front of the camera and things. Like I'm model, but like I never wanted to be the face of anything. So I always wanted to give others the voice and the platform to do that for themselves. And that's where the idea of Sad Girls Club came from, just something that's bigger than me that will help a community that I never thought needed me the most.
Well, you say you don't like to be in front of the camera, but you do such a great job at it, and your story resonates. The way you speak to us resonates, and I just am very grateful for you and for the work that you've done because a lot of us we might not communicate through film, but we have a difficult time communicating our feelings. Like I did not grow up
Yeah,
in a situation where our feelings that was a lower priority than a lot of things.
right, right. And it's like,
What are
it's
these
such a,
feelings?
right. Like that's definitely on the back burner. And that's a lot about our experiences. I don't know which generation you're in. I feel like we're a similar age, but it wasn't prioritized. The conversations of mental health wasn't a priority. It wasn't spoken about at the dinner table. Education was always first. There were always so many things that trumped that, which made me feel like my mental health wasn't even a priority and shouldn't be a priority for my own care.
Well, when you think about the initial reaction to what you were doing and the work that you were putting out, were you surprised? Did you expect it to resonate with so many people?
No, I was mad surprised. I thought people were gonna think I was weird or just like I don't want to hang out with this girl. She's mad sad. She doesn't want like I just thought people would think I was just like creature that like wasn't valuable. You know, I thought I was invaluable and like I put that out there to show like, okay, well if this is gonna be my last film or whatever comes from this, like at least I put it out there. This is who I am and I wanted to speak my truth. But when just I was receiving messages and girls were like 13, 12, like 21 and women who are in their 50s and 60s. Like, I've never heard anyone speak about this as freely as you do. And I'm feeling this way too. And even people in my own family were like texting me. People I was in group messages with, they were texting me on the side. I'm like, why don't we talk about this in the group message? We're all feeling the same things. But it just showed like, you just start the conversation and people are like, they want to have it. They want somebody who's a safe space to talk about these things. So it is very heavy. And it is also shocking to know that like even men, women, anybody can have mental health issues. It's just they can be so close to you, but also the feelings can feel so distant.
Oh, and also normalizing the word sad, which seems to have become like this really negative word in our society. Because I'm a naturally bubbly person, but I'm sad a lot. I'm sad right now. I got something going on that's driving me up a wall. But it's just like if someone asks you how you are, sad. You're not allowed to respond that way. And that makes it even worse because we feel like we
Yeah.
have to keep the sad hid. Or in my experience, I also feel because I'm bubbly, people are like, "What do you mean you're sad? You're like smiling and bouncing up the wall." And that's what I think,
Right.
interestingly enough, your approach to this is very helpful with.
I try, and I get some pushback on the name Sad Girls Club because people are like, "Why are you pushing that name? Why are you pushing that word? It's negative." And I'm like, "How do you have happiness without sadness?" And also for a young girl or younger children who like are just learning their emotions, they know happy, they know sad, they know mad, they know hungry. So I simplified it. So even if you're a 5 year old, you're not gonna know like this is a depression and anxiety club. They're not gonna know that language, at least not yet. But they can understand like, oh, sad, that's what I resonate with. This might be a club for me. So I always tell people if they don't like the name, like start your own club and you can name it whatever you want, and then let me know how it's going. You know, when you do it. But sadness, I feel like sadness is just it should be normalized because it's an emotion we all feel, no matter how much money you have or status or whatever. Like we all go through it at a certain point.
And when you come up with these ideas, right? Like you see this, you're doing this, but it's still hard. It's not like overnight. It went from, oh, I made this film, it was very popular, to boom, I have work in Teen Vogue and I am on Essence Fest panels and I'm doing all this. This was not an easy process. This has been how many years at this point?
7 years, which is
Seven
wild.
years.
7 years, yeah, seven
So it's
years,
your first
and
baby.
It's my first baby, exactly. And I think we live in a time of like instant gratification, or people don't see you like, and I call it in the mud, like when you're just digging and you're getting the nose. And I got denied from so many grants in the beginning because as a nonprofit, you have to kind of earn that trust with the government, and we're providing support for the lowest priority people in the country. So we're not prioritized in general. So like to get funding and to constantly hear no's, or to hear like we don't feel what you're doing is valuable, that could have like stopped me a long time ago. But I'm like, no, like what I'm doing is great. I'm gonna find a different way to do it. And I just found my own way, but it wasn't like by any means easy. It didn't happen like it wasn't an overnight sensation. And also people equate like followers to funding, and that also we all know that isn't true either. But it's been definitely a labor of love, and I'm happy. Like I feel like the past 3, 4 years we've earned our respect in the nonprofit space, and people see the goals and like what's been living in my mind over the past like 5 years. So I feel like I'm thinking a bit ahead, and people are like catching up, and I'm like, thank you. These are my ideas from like 2021, but cool. Like you can join them now. But it's exciting. It's exciting now that I have like I think the respect and the platform to like really speak, and the experience to also have the data to prove that what we're doing is what's needed in the world.
Well, and you mentioned something that I think is very key because you are a nonprofit. What is the difference between step one, why did you choose to go the nonprofit route? And step two, how does that complicate things in terms of your entrepreneurship?
So so for two reasons I chose a nonprofit route. One was because I was still very much depressed, and like navigating my own depression and treatment when I started this company. And I was like, I don't even have the confidence to like half the time get out of the bed, let alone go in front of investors and ask for money on something that none of the people in the room will look like me. I don't know if this would even be a priority to them, but I feel like having an in-person note would hit different than having an email note. And also I didn't want to profit off of my people's like pain. And I feel like um, that's been happening a lot, and it happens. This is how the country was built. So I was just like, I want to give back as much as I possibly can. Like I didn't take a salary until like 3 years ago, and I'm always just like, I want to pour back into the community, and I also want for-profit companies and for-profit brands, and also like the communities that are kind of causing a lot of trauma, to be able to support what I'm doing and the work that I'm doing. So it's a whole different ballgame when you're stepping in front of investors and you have to ask for things, because you also have to give them things back. I didn't want anyone else, especially people who didn't look like us, to profit off of our pain.
And people need to understand there's a lot of paperwork. This is not easy. It's
Woo!
almost like the more altruistic you are, the more good intentions you have, the
Yep.
harder it. Because if you were just, Elise over here with your little sad shingle, you could just you're breaking it in. But when you are a nonprofit, there are so many hoops, there's so many regulations, there's so many rules that you don't often
Yeah.
find out until you close to accidentally almost messing with them.
Yes. Yes, that's 1000%. And like, I think the minimum amount of time, or like the shortest amount of time it takes to even get a nonprofit status is like 6 to 8 months. So you can have this great idea, but you don't even have the status to even start fundraising or to begin fundraising. You're not even applicable to like receiving these grants. So almost a year, you have to figure out what are you going to do for yourself while you are trying to build out this really great idea. And then also, I came from a film and production background, which is completely different from a nonprofit background. Didn't take one business class. So a lot of the things, like, we're essentially owned by the IRS. So there's a lot of reporting, there's a lot of data analytics, there's a lot of tracking, there's a lot of measurement. You have to like keep track of every little thing, very differently than a for-profit company. And like you said, sometimes you don't know about the deadlines until you're approaching it, or like you get a letter in the mail. You're like, oh, okay, now I know this moving forward. But it's been a really interesting learning experience for myself, and I really have to thank my team for like supporting and helping and like jumping in, and people have galvanized around Sad Girls Club to provide like that kind of support, because Lord knows it wasn't going to be me.
Well, but it is you because by having this status, by going about it in this way, you are a trustworthy source. You are a safe space that can provide services and offer opportunities in ways that previously you would not be able to, right? And talk to us since you got the status, you started being able to apply for the grants. What was the first big break? What was the first big grant that you received for Sad Girls Club that made you realize, oh my gosh, we're all in this together?
I'll say our first big grant, and I was happy to just to get $500, but I would say our first big grant came from Lululemon. And this came at a point where I was still actively like modeling. So I would, whenever I had a contract or any type of offer, I would say like, hey, you want me to model for like XYZ, but I also have this really great nonprofit. Can there be some type of give back so we can make this like a full circle moment? And now I kind of command it, but at that time I was like, hey, I have this project and I think it'll be really great and it aligns. So Lululemon, they gave us, I think, or donated $10,000, and it was unrestricted funding, which is like the best kind of funding for a nonprofit, because a lot of grants, they don't want you to pay for staff, they don't want you to pay for anything unless it's program specific, and they don't include people in program costs. So an unrestricted grant is like amazing because we can use it for, staffing, we can use it for like food for events, we can use it across the board. So like Lululemon was our first big grant, and I think that was in 2020.
Ah, and since then, that's amazing. And I love how you used your day job to fund your passion project, which is now your day job.
Yes, exactly, exactly. It kind of flip flops, but it's so interesting. It's very interesting, and I'm just grateful for like to be in this position and also to have people who are in positions to support really advocate for the need and the help and the resources that SGC provides. Because in the beginning, we were so scrappy. Like I was just asking for favors. I'm like ordering food from Trader Joe's and like going like just trying to make a like charcuterie board out of like nothing. And now I can like I look at that now and I'm like, I'm so proud of like the events that we had, even though they did seem scrappy on my end, because that's what people really noticed. And they also appreciated that I was honestly pouring every penny that I had into this mission that I didn't know where it was going to take us, but I knew it was needed.
Oh, and the heart of it actually is who you are, and I love you because the message is the same, just because whether it's Trader Joe's or catered, right? And I like what you say when you talk to people, and you say that sometimes we mix up consumption in cash with self-care, right? And one of the great messages I think that you do through your nonprofit, through your direct communication, is providing messaging that is counterculture to the world we're currently in, right? Like you say, you do
Yeah.
not have to spend money for self-care. That is something that a lot of us tend to try to self-heal by doing so.
Absolutely. I think we all kind of fall into it. Like, especially, I would say, especially during the pandemic with that like Amazon rush. Like, you would just place an order. You wanted your home to look like XYZ's house, and it was just so easy to receive things. And the joy of receiving a package in the mail is like, it's unmatched. Like, I get it, completely get it. But that isn't going to, it's not sustainable. One, it's not sustainable. And also, if you're in a place where, say, you're on vacation and you're having an anxiety attack, you can't just order something from Amazon and make yourself feel better. So there are certain practices and things that you can do. There's so many things that are free in the world. It's free to go outside. It's free to take a walk. It's free to like get some fresh air. Take it instead of having all of your calls at your desk, like go for a walk in the park or go for a walk down the street and just like let the sun flow on your face. Like there are so many little things that you can do that are absolutely free. And you can also excuse me, you can also catalog what feels good and what, may not feel good now. But you can also just create a list of things like, I just wanted to clean my room. Like that actually made me feel way better. When my room is a mess, it shows my state of mind. When things all over the place and my son's toys are everywhere, I'm like, that's my state of mind right now. But when I clean it up, I'm like, I feel way better. And that's self-care. Like self-care doesn't always have to be swiping that card, tapping that card, or supporting Bezos.
I well, and speaking of him, speaking of your wonderful mini you son, how has motherhood shaped your entrepreneurship? As you've built the Sad Girls Club, you're raising a happy boy.
That's my little nugget. I feel like he's the personification of what happiness means to me, and he's my consistent reminder that I'm able to keep going. Like he just believes in me so much. Like I took him to Essence Fest, and then after my panel, he's like, "Mommy, I'm so proud of you. Like you were on that stage." I'm like, "Thank you." Like just hearing his feedback and knowing that what I'm doing is creating change for him. For a very long time, he didn't know what the hell I did. He was just like, "Yeah, you go to work, you sit on your computer," but I'm now able to bring him to our events, and now he's like, this is our company. Like, I love these company events. This is fun. I do floor arrangement. I meet people, like, and everyone dotes on him because they kind of know his story too. But he gets to see how I think he gets to see in his own way the impact that his mother is creating. But I'm also like, he's also my main priority, and he completely understands that. So whenever I can take him for the ride, just to see and experience, and to also like learn too, like it's it's been just like a joy. It's been a joy, unexpected joy, but like definitely a joy.
And I think that's what's really great about being able to do this kind of work, because it's the work that you need to do on yourself. It's like you get to live in the work that you need to do, and you're learning things. Like, what are some things that you've learned from the work that you've done for Sad Girls Club that are helping you raise your son? Like, what are some of the tactics or the strategies or the thought processes?
I'm learning, I've learned like the power of language and just how like things that like phrases that I was taught growing up are just so unhelpful in the real world. Like just whatever happens in this house stays in this house, and you don't talk about your problems outside of this house. And I'm learning that just through him, because I'm like, I want you to, if something happens outside this house or inside this house and you don't like it, I want to be able to know about it. So just the power of language and open communication and letting him know, like, you sharing your feelings with me, they're valid. Like the way you do it is kind of the way I kind of critique it a little bit, but like I always want you to know that this is an open and safe space for you. And then I'm pretty much like, I let him guide. Like I want to do like the same way self-care for me might be just like going outside or we're taking a walk. Sometimes he's just like, I want to go in the backyard and I don't want you to come out there with me. And I'm like, okay, I'm watching from the window, but I feel like back in the day I couldn't just say like, I'm going outside, mom. She's like, no, you're not. You're gonna do X, Y, Z first. But like, I'm like, if his room is a little messy, he'll come back and do it later. He'll go back in the backyard, he'll water the plants, he'll like pick up rocks, dig up dirt, play with bugs, and he'll come back in, go ahead and clean your room up, and he'll do it. So I'm learning just like the power of patience, which I didn't have a lot of, and I feel like it was really difficult to have. But I've kind of retrained my mind to be slower and to be more mindful and to also be a better listener and like get down on his level when I'm talking to him and not just talking down, looking at him. Like those little things, those little nuances, I feel like is what makes him appreciate me as his parent, and the respect is there as well too.
I love that. And also, when we're talking about having patience with our children, having patience with ourselves, how
Yeah.
much of the Sad Girl Club, the teachings, the lessons, the events are just about being kinder and more gentler with ourselves?
Yes, and it's oftentimes like girls will come into Sad Girls Club, they don't know many people, and then you always feel like your problems are unique to you. And then once one person starts speaking and someone else starts speaking, they're like, wait, I thought this was just a me thing. And then you learn at the end of the day, like all of these pressures that we're putting on ourselves are being placed on ourselves. You know what I mean? Like we put so many like benchmarks for what we need to be, what we need to do. And sometimes it comes from work, but a lot of the times you're putting those own negative thoughts and negative talk into your own head. So like now like, I'm pretty much like, well, I can get this done on this day and it'll be like half behind work, or I can take a minute and be patient, listen to myself and do it tomorrow morning and it'll probably be the best work I've done all week. So I think just like the patience of just understanding what you need in that moment, advocating for yourself, sending that email, hey, I know the deadline was this day, but I can get it to you by 12 p.m. the next day, like advocating for yourself and your time, and then taking that time to do what you need to do to feel more aligned. That is something that we have the power to do. The worst thing they can say is no, we're in the same position, but then you re-strategize from there. But I do think that we put a lot of unnecessary pressures on ourselves just to like keep up with what we think other people are doing in our own minds.
It's so much pressure. And you talk about social media a lot too.
Hmm. It
It
is, sorry.
No, no, no. I mean, like, what is it? It is it's how we find each other, but it's also how we fall
Yeah.
apart.
It is. It's definitely it's an addiction. I think it's like the newest generational addiction. And like I don't want to be too dramatic, but I'm like everyone I know who, or a lot of, I would say 90% of the members of Sad Girls Club are very much on these platforms. They have to set a timer to get off of these platforms. Like it's like very addictive behavior. And I remember when I first started Sad Girls Club, the founder of Instagram actually reached out to me. His name was Kevin, and he said like, what you're doing is exactly why myself and my co-founder started the app. We want people to meet each other on the app. We want them to go exploring on the app, post pictures of like places, and we want people to get the hell off the app and go to those places and meet those people, and not just post just to like, I know what for what it is now, like the clout chase. You are creating community outside of the app, and that's what the intention was when we started this, is for people around the world to find similar interests and do those interests off of this app. So with his support and his support and like his co-sign of Sad Girls Club, that gave us a really great boost. But it's also like it's a great place to meet people. But I think it's like our newest addiction, and we have to figure out a way to one, be better educated and educate our own children, because it's going to take forever for the school system to do that for us. But you have to set parameters. And myself, as a grown woman who knows, like, I shouldn't be on TikTok at 1 in the morning. I'm not going to cook this meal right now. Why am I watching this recipe? Nara Smith is not going to come to my door and like help me out with this right now. So it's just like setting your own boundaries, but like you can't really expect a 9-year-old, 10-year-old to do that on their own. So it's a slippery slope, and I think we have to take the power back into our own hands. And my son doesn't know anything about social media right now, and I hope to keep that as long as possible.
I love that. And one thing that you also are doing is you are expanding your reach. Like you start talk about the demographics that you started with, and now you speak to the gamut. You help sad girls from like what 5 to 55 to 105.
Yes, it's all across the board now. When we first began, I would say our first couple years was very New York City, tri-state area based. Um, Millennials that were like my age at the time, so I was like in my early mid 20s. And they've grown up with us, of course, but now I think it kind of scales from the younger Gen Z, or yeah, from the younger Gen Z to, what is it? Is it Gen Alpha, the one before them? Like, because my niece is a
Oh
part of
yeah.
Sad Girls Club, and she's turning
Oh.
16. So it's like Gen Alpha up into like my mom. I've gotten her involved in Sad Girls Club as well. So the boomer generation as well, they're involved too. So it's been so dope, and I get to see that in real time, which I'm really grateful that we've all made it out the pandemic safely, at least at Sad Girls Club, and we've been able to support our community through the pandemic. But now when we convene, I'm like, wow, we had a girl as young as 7 come to one of our events, and then we had someone bring like their grandmother. So it shows that like everybody needs these spaces, everyone has to have these conversations, and it's also like just an uplifting space where anybody can be a part of it.
Absolutely. It's funny. My daughter had no idea I was talking to you, and she's 10. And she asked me, I kid you not, I'm not making this up, like 3 or 4 days ago, Mommy, are you ever sad? And then when I said,
Oh,
all the time, I'm sad like multiple times a day. And when I say she was shook, she was
really?
like, she was like, really? And she was just a little, how do you, I was, it was like clouds that are in the sky. You know, you got the sun, it's a happy day, and then stub your toe, ow, I'm sad, or some bad
Yeah,
news, or something happens to grandma, and then it's just, but you just gotta know, you just have your coping mechanisms, you have your tools, you
yeah.
put your big girl panties on. And eventually the clouds hopefully move away enough for you to feel happy again.
I love how you
But
phrase that.
well, I'm country as all get out, right? So it's always something. Honestly, I feel like she probably had no idea what half of what I was saying, but it sounded good. Sounded
Yeah.
like it's okay to be sad, you know. And, but it's just good to bring. It's like how we have fortunately normalized the word vagina. You normalize the word black, right? You normalize the word sad. These are
Right.
words that have had stigma in our societies, and the more we say them, the less power they have over us.
Exactly. Exactly. And that's the whole thing. We're trying to destigmatize, um, provide resources, and also like curate community. So you have everything you kind of need, like a toolbox. So if you want to talk about it, you can talk about it. We have a digital program so anybody can join, and we also have in-person events. So like if you want the in-person community and connection, we got you. And that's just like the role that I'm playing to destigmatize the word and also provide wellness like around the entire world. We all deserve to feel good. And if I can do anything to help, then I will.
And you're doing a lot on wide scales. So when we look at this, a lot of these problems would be fixed if, again, everyone was as lucky as your son, right? To have these active thoughts and processes from the get. When you talk about your 16-year-old niece who comes to your events, I couldn't help but think about how wonderful it is that you're working with Teen Vogue.
Yes, yes, that was another full circle moment because Teen Vogue had they an editor had written like a really great piece. It was the first piece I've ever or the first interview I've ever done. I had to be media trained down because I was just like, I need to prepare. And then 5 years later, she reached out, or 6 years later, she reached out last December. And she's like, hey, like, I've always wanted to do more with Sad Girls Club. Like, I know we've been having conversations over the past year or so, but like, we're going to start a mental health or like a wellness column. We've never had one before, which I thought was interesting for Teen Vogue. We want you to launch it and it'd be your own column. So it's called Soft Launch, and I launched it in January of 2024. And it's been like it's been so cool because I don't consider myself a writer, but like I get to do things in my own style, which I think is nice. I add my own flavor, and I think people like that it's not completely like. But to me, it feels very unfinished, but people resonate with it, which I like. I love. It feels like a diary entry, and I get to also uplift other creators, other wellness advocates. I get to tell their stories and give them this wide platform to like continue doing the work that they're doing. So I've been like spotlighting Pride, Mental Health Awareness Month, Women's History Month, and that's been a great opportunity for me to just uplift other people of color and the great work that they're doing.
So if you look at, first and foremost, I do need to acknowledge that I think your writing is delightful. I think it's not feel
Thank you.
unfinished at all. I think it's very poetic and it feels very authentic and real, which is extremely hard to do. In particular because it's stressful, you know, it's stressful
So
putting
stressful.
yourself out in these streets, but you out there and resonating and doing a great job. And it's been 7 years. So now you've got your sea legs. You've been doing this for some time. You've changed countless lives. You've helped even more feel comfortable with themselves. When you look at you 7 years ago in Los Angeles, what would you tell her now? Because a lot of people listening are in that place. They are in the place where they don't feel good. They are really afraid of people knowing. You know, as you know, I had to put y'all on mute and I had to go and handle a personal issue in my own household. And I had to come back here and do podcasts. And even though I love it, we're all just grappling with so much. And I feel fortunate
Yeah,
to have a good therapist and to have a support system and to be okay talking about these feelings and the compartmentalization and the not so much
right.
compartmentalization of them. But a lot of people here listening, then the work is still in progress. Well, we're all still in progress, but the work is at
Hmm.
the beginning, not the end. What is your
Yeah.
advice to 7 years ago you and people listening or watching who might be in a similar place?
I would say lean into what and who makes you feel good, whether it's somebody who just can make you laugh, someone you can talk to. And it might not be the person that first comes to mind. It might not be like your best friend. It might be like an auntie who's older or somebody that you maybe not just met, but like a coworker. Like, I feel like there's so many people where we're like, no, they have too much going on. They're too busy. They're too this, but like lean into who and what makes you feel good. And if the what is, if you need to like take a break, or if a break sounds like paradise to you, or if it sounds like, it'll be everything, like figure out how to take that break, because you will inevitably like you will crash if you continue to move on in ways that don't feel good for you or to you. You will inevitably feel worse. So I'll say lean in there, and also don't be afraid to speak out. Like, there are people who do love you, there are people who do want to listen to you, there are people who do want to support you, and no one is too busy to help a friend's life or to save a life. And I also think that like we vent to our friends. We talk about like the boys, the social media stuff, all the like crap, essentially, like things that don't fulfill us. But like the same friends that you pour into for that, you should be able to pour into for like real talk and real feeling. So if you got to have a sidebar and say like, yo, I know this is a silly silly group message, and they might be in different places around the country, but I desperately need somebody to talk to and be a little bit vulnerable. I think vulnerability is also a little bit stigmatized, because everyone I know is like, I'm a powerful entrepreneur and I can't show feelings. But like, even if you're no matter where you are, like you should always be able to like be vulnerable and like have a moment of just real talk.
Thank you all for listening and watching Mompreneurs. Just a reminder, a brand new episode comes out every Monday on Urban One Podcast Network, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. Visit urban1podcast.com to learn more. That's urban, the number one, podcast.com. Mompreneurs is brought to you by the Urban One Podcast Network and MadameNoire. Created, produced, and hosted by me, Nancy Wren. Executive produced by Sarita Wesley, Allison McGovna, and Tanya Hoffler-Moore. Produced and edited by Jiminique Miller.